Good morning, good Shavua Tov. Have a good week, good month, the month of Elul, preparing for the coronation of the king and Rosh Hashanah. Parshas Ki Tetzei. Ki Tetzei le'milchama alevecha. When you go out to war on your enemy, Unatano Hashem Elokecha b'yadecha, and God will put it in your hands. Put your enemy into your hands. B'shavita shivyo, and you'll take, and if you happen to take a prisoner, a Eshet Yafat Torah, it says a beautiful woman, and you desire her, says you can take her into your house. Good morning. When you go out to war on your enemy, and God puts it into your hand, and you will take a prisoner, a female prisoner, a woman that she finds favor in your eyes, as it's permissible for the soldier to have relations with her one time, and then he can take her into his house, and there's a whole procedure that he has to do, that she has to sit there and she can't put on makeup, and she has to look very unattractive for 1 month, and then if he decides he wants to marry her, then he can marry her. He can't have any more relations with her until then. Either that or he has to let her go. This is the law of the Eshet Yafas Torah. Very strange law. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh will read that, God willing. Says that it's talking about sparks of holiness that were trapped in the enemy, and that we can elevate them. Sounds a bit strange, right? But here we go. Now, Judaism introduced a whole new thing into the world, a whole new idea of what God is into the world. First of all, it introduced, to this very day, the idea of serving God. In other words, not expecting any remuneration, no sort of return. God doesn't owe him anything. God doesn't owe us anything, and we owe him everything. That's what Judaism brought into the world, which is the truth. God doesn't owe us anything. He's already giving us everything for free. And we owe him everything, because everything we have is his. That's called serving God. What do we owe him? He's lacking something? What do we owe him? This is okay, from our point of view, of course, we owe him everything because he's giving us everything that we've got. But also from his point of view, he's, so to speak, lacking something. That's why he put us into the world, in order that we should fix up the world. So that's the whole idea of serving God. New concept in mankind. Totally encompassing new, there's a, they call it a perspective on life, that God demands from us. We have to do things for God without thinking of any return. That's what Abraham founded. If you look in the Bible, you'll see that that's what he did. It's not like any other Bible. So here it's talking about how to serve God. How to serve God. Now, one of the main things of serving God is you have to love God. You have to appreciate God. You have to appreciate who you're serving. You have to have an appreciation, a little bit as a list of who you're serving. And there also, in addition, there's a commandment to actually have emotional, real, genuine love, not to act, to go to acting school, to actually love God, to actually encourage others to love God, to appreciate, to feel what God is, to feel the closeness of God, the greatness of God, etc. To feel. So this is a big battle, because the world, God created the world in such a way that it doesn't feel. Now, why he did this whole business, nobody knows. It's impossible to understand. But the fact of the matter is that he did it. right? It's like saying that I want a pair of glasses, but I don't want two. I want only one because I want one eye. I mean, you got two eyes. That's it. You can deny it if you want. You can pretend you don't. But the fact is you do. Like now people, they're men and they pretend, they think that they're women. So it's a woman. She thinks she's a man, she's a man. A man thinks it's a dog, so it's a dog. You can think whatever you want to, but the fact of the matter is it's the fact. So fact is that God really does exist and he really does love us and he really does expect a lot from us. And we have tremendous responsibility to him and we have to serve him. That's reality. That's reality. Just like you've got two eyes and you have a mother and a father. Everybody has a mother and a father. But you can deny you have a mother and a father, but if you're here in the world, son, you got a mother and a father somewhere. It's the same thing also with God. When God gave the Torah, he started a whole new thing in the world, a whole entire nation of his servants. Avodayim. So let's go. Now it's talking about this service is not just, okay, I'll do the commandments. It has to be in a way of war. It has to be a war. War implies self-sacrifice. Danger. This is what God wants for us. So let's go. When you go to war on your enemy, who is your enemy? Potentially the whole world can be your enemy, potentially. Or more exactly, your, how do you say, your projections to the world, your interpretation of the world. But God will put it into your hands and you'll take a prisoner. Hine, behold, Ita Zohar. It says in the book, the Zohar. Zohar is mystical Judaism. It says in the Zohar, Sha'at, Salut, at the time of prayer. Shat Melkam is the time of war. Shat Karava is the time of war. The Ketivin is written, Asher Lakachti Miyade Amori Bacharbi Ubakashti. It says that I took from the Amori, Yaakov said, I took from the Amorites, Shechem, I took from the Amorites, Bacharbi Ubakashti. There's a lot of different meanings of this, but simply it means Bacharbi with my sword and with my bow and arrow. And Targum Onkelos doesn't translate it though. There's the Aramaic translation. He doesn't translate it sword and arrow. He says, but Saloti, my sword and my arrows. He translates these tools of war. He translates it very interesting. He translates it. Yaakov said, I took with Bitsaloti Ubaloti, because Yaakov didn't fight against it. He says, with my prayers and my requests from God. So the time of prayer is the time of war. That's when we really start to change our heart. We fight against our misconceptions that cause us to love ourselves and the world and pleasures, to love these things. These things are not bad, but you have to love them. What you're supposed to love is the creator of the universe. That's who you're supposed to love. That's who you're supposed to love. Because the creator of the universe, he's creating everything. He's creating us. He's creating our pleasures. He's more real than all the money in the world and everything. So we should really love him. But it's a big battle to do it. It's a battle. It's not just saying, okay, so I'll do it. Just sit in a mountain, meditate, and that's it. To understand, what is this idea of a war when you pray? You have a book, a prayer book, you pray from the book, you say the words, that's enough, right? No. That's just the beginning. It's like, you say you want to be a soldier, so, you get drafted into the army, special services, special corps, and then you get your gun, your uniform, take a picture, send it back home to your parents, and that's it. I'm finished. What do you mean you're finished? You haven't even started yet. I got my gun, my uniform, boots are shined, took a few classes, went through boot camp. And that's it. Prayer is not just you put on your tefillin, you put on the uniform, you can take a couple classes, you know what you're saying, and that's it. Now you have to fight. Now is the battle. What type of battle are you supposed to fight when you're praying? Why do we have to pray every day? Let's just pray when we need to pray, when you need something, right? You need something. You're getting low on gas and you don't know where the next gas station is. You're looking for a parking place. You have an important meeting. No, that's when you pray. But every day you have to pray. What do you have to pray for every day? None of that. We pray 3 times a day. Behold, Omer Azal, the rabbi say, Tefillah Keneged Tamidim Tikna, says that the prayers that we pray correspond to what's called the continual offering in the Holy Temple. It was continual because it was every day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, late afternoon. The prayers that we pray now are in the place of the sacrifices. When the Holy Temple was destroyed, that's when really prayers really kicked in. Jewish prayers were organized because it's in the place of the sacrifices. And what does it mean? The prayers are in the place of the sacrifices. What's one got to do with the other one? First of all, what does the sacrifices got to do with anything? What are you killing animals for? That's Judaism. What type of religion? I don't think there's any religion in the world today. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not an expert in religions of the world that make animal sacrifices. They do that. I don't know. Who makes animal sacrifices? So it says, well, we Jews also don't make any animal sacrifices because there's no holy temple. But Mashiach is going to bring that holy temple, and we're going to make sacrifices again. Just like we did back then, we pray it to God. Please, Oshiva, may we be Bonei Yerushalayim, that we could make the sacrifices again, the holy temple. Az naseh lefanecha kamitzvos sanecha, we'll do in front of you. What's this thing about the sacrifices? In any case, prayer is in the place of these sacrifices. The Inyan is like this. It says, Karbani lachmi leishai. It says about the sacrifices that they are my bread for my fire. God is saying this. The sacrifices, that's my meal. Shayu makriv and korban bezuman beit hamikdash. They would make a sacrifice in the time of the holy temple. La'ola al gavia mizbeach, that it should go up on top of the altar. Mimina behema, from an animal. Kadei, in order shetered eish min hashamayim, there would come down fire from heaven. The tochal et ha'ola, and it would devour the sacrifice. It really happened. Ki, because chayas nefesh bahamis, because the life of this animal soul, he yesodam, yesoda eish, comes from the element of fire. Ki daled bechinas, because there's 4 elements, right? Earth, air, fire, and water. Here, domim, earth. No, I'm sorry, not the 4 elements. The 4 types of life that corresponds to the 4 elements. We'll see. The 4 types of life. Domim is mineral. Sameach, plant. Chaya is animals. Medaber are humans. That corresponds to earth. No, corresponds to, I'm sorry. Aish. Aish is fire. That really corresponds to the animal. Chaya. Ruach. That corresponds to Medaber, man. Mayim. That corresponds to plant. Afar corresponds to earth, to domim, to minerals. So mineral, plant, animal, human corresponds to the 4 elements, which are Eish, Ruach, Mayim, Afar. Fire, wind, water, and dirt. Right? Fire corresponds to animal, Ruach to man, Mayim, plant, Afar is mineral. Bechinas Eish, the level of Eish, fire, corresponds to the level of animal. Ruach, this corresponds to man. Like it says, like it says, man, when God made man in the beginning of the creation, it says man became a living soul. Targum Onkelos, and Onkelos translates these translations that they translate with a holy in spirit. Ruach HaKodesh. The Targum Onkelos, the Ruach Memala, Memalala, a speaking spirit. So man corresponds to wind. In any case, when the animal, which corresponds to fire, was offered on the altar as fire would come down from heaven, Min HaShamayim, Hayanichlal Eishalamata, then the fire from below, namely that was in the animal, would be enclosed in the fire from above, which came from above. And this comes from what's called the upper chariot of God, the face of the lion, the face of the ox. In other words, let's say it in a simple way, right? Who would ever believe that a cow, a sheep, a goat is holy? A cow and a sheep and a goat, it's an animal. They go wander around in fields and they make fertilizer and they make more cows and sheep and they eat and then they provide food, right? If you're carnivorous, if you're not a vegan or something, so then you eat meat. But holy, how are these things holy? It's just a regular part of the world. In fact, nothing is holy. What's holy? There's something that's holy? The world is a world. It's a regular world. Says that's what you think. The fact of the matter is that everything is made from God and that everything has a purpose. And holy means something that reveals God, the creator of the world. And even more, it reveals not just God, it reveals the purpose of the creation, the inner reason why God is creating that thing. That's called service. Everything is created to serve God. Animals have no free will. So man can use the animal and give it a whole entire different dimension of importance and meaning. Animals are holy. Who would believe it? By means of the Beit HaMikdash, bricks became holy. Physical rocks, bricks that they used to make the temple and the altar and this, they became holy. They revealed there's a creator that's tremendously valuable, tremendously meaningful. Right nowadays, you bring into a pawn shop, what is it? The stick. Your stick. What's the stick for? This stick was owned by, by George Washington. He used it when he crossed over the Delaware. Here it is. You can see this is in. They check it out. It's got his fingerprints on his DNA. Wow, this stick must be worth at least $20,000. Nah, $20,000 is not enough. I'll go to another place. They gave me $100,000. Okay, a stick. What are you talking about? That stick? Because you knew it belonged to George Washington. The thing is tremendous. Well, the whole world belongs to God. The whole world is precious. Not just George Washington, God that created George Washington. It's really incredibly precious. Money can't buy it. But nevertheless, that's the fact of the world. That's the fact of business. God is creating everything. But it's only revealed through avodah, by means of service. And the service was in the temple, and they offered up offerings. And that's what we have to do when we pray. That's what it says, that in the first temple, in any case, there was a lion that came from heaven, and it devoured the sacrifices. Since the temple was destroyed, the men of the great assembly established tefillah, prayer. After the first temple was destroyed, the men of the great assembly were of the second temple. But prayer didn't really kick in until after the second temple was destroyed. Tefillah, sheyakriv kol echad, after the temple was destroyed. So the men of the great assembly, who were the men of the great assembly? There was like Daniel and Mordechai and Chagai, Zechariah and Malachi, all these big prophets and big, holy people, Ezra, Nehemiah. Says that after the temple was destroyed, the men of the great assembly established tefillah, prayer, shiakriv kol echad, that each and every person would sacrifice nafsho habahamis, is natural animal soul, natural human personality, la'aloto, to elevate it, ulakashra, and to tie it b'shosho, in its source, which also comes from fire. right? We have an animal inside of us that also, its source is also fire. Umokar chutzpah, the assertus of Bahari Kodesh, that is in what's called the high mountains, holy, Mirkav Elyona, Pnei Arya, Pnei Shor, etc. So the soul, the animal soul, comes from this tremendously high place, just like the animals that they sacrificed in the holy temple. Ella ba'achrei shir, but after it came down, the animal soul comes down. And it chained down here, ayin sarim, in what's called the 70 chieftain angels, b'shmori ofanim, and what's called the dregs of these other types of angels called ofanim. Nimshach, tainu ge'olam hazeh, they're all the pleasures of this world. B'koach ha'misaba, and the power to desire them, shugam kein chamimus ha'esh, which also comes from fire. And so the Yetzer Hora, even the selfish, self-destructive impulses, this is also strange fire. Dolek, which burns, tzarech la'alot nefesh habahamis, and you have to elevate it to its source. So here we have a very basic thing which Judaism is trying to get across to the world, and that is that God is reality. God is reality, and even more, God, the reason I say that is so you don't think that God is some like spiritual being that's up in the upper heavens, and that he just sort of sits up there like, some sort of a Greek god or something from the Iliad, and he's just sitting there, as Greek as the Iliad, whatever it is. Anyway, they just sits up there and he looks down. No. Reality, you see reality, you see that there's a table in front of you, you see you've got hands, you've got eyes, you have this. This is all real. It's real, right? It's real, but it's coming from a bigger reality, and that bigger reality is God. God is really creating you and me all the time. That's what Judaism says. Take it or leave it, but that's the truth. It says, but life is a thing that's dynamic. Life is a thing that's dynamic. The main emphasis of Judaism is life in this world. Very small emphasis on death. Everybody dies. But the emphasis on Judaism is not on death. Death is a very not good thing in Judaism. A very negative thing. We try to avoid it and to prolong life as much as possible. It's forbidden to make abortions. It's forbidden euthanasia. Except in certain cases. Okay, abortion is also permissible in certain cases, but only the times when it's permissible is exceptions. War, in the time of war, you can kill people, yes. But those are exceptions. It's not the rule. We don't look for war. We don't look for these exceptions. So God is infinitely real. But the problem is that he creates everything. Everything. So everything is real. That's why the pleasures of this world seem so real. And they are real, right? They are real. A person eats whatever is an ice cream cone, ice cream on a hot day, feels good. But don't overdo it. You can get addicted to ice cream. Don't overdo it. But the fact of the matter is all these pleasures and things that are in the world, those are very, very low and sometimes very contorted aspects of revealed godliness. Pleasure, he feels pleasure. Oh, this is life. Oh, no, I'm alive. It says this pleasure we have to elevate to its source. That's what it means. Take the animal and bring it up to its source. We don't have a temple nowadays, but we do have an animal. Animals are not lacking, and inside of us also. And this, what's called the animal soul, we have to elevate it to its source. Namely, its source is also fire, that it should be included in what's called the upper chariot of God. This is the fire, that's called a fire which devours fire. The fire, the source of the animal soul is fire. And the animal soul in this world is also fire. So we have to have the upper fire devour the lower fire. Or in simple English, enthusiasm for the truth will devour the enthusiasm for selfishness. The fire from below, that people get pleasure in this world. A person shouldn't go in them, in the pleasures, except the kriyus, and in a cold way, objective. That's the whole problem with pleasures of the world, is they make you lose your objectivity, that you're not objective anymore. Suddenly you become an animal and you love it. You love, oh, this is the real me. I had a whole process of why I started becoming religious. This is like 50 years ago. 50 years ago it was. And one of the steps was I used to play music, and I played a couple of times these parties for like professors and places like this. I was in University of Michigan. And I played at parties, and I saw these people acted. And I thought, okay, people want to have pleasures, but they were sunk totally. I mean, I didn't see anything like really, sordid or anything, but I saw that all went on in the back rooms. I saw how these people were just sunk in the pleasures, like in the daytime, that's their job. They're philosophers, or they're sociologists, or they're, economists, or whatever, the professors in this and professor in that. And in the nighttime, then that's the real person comes up. And I saw that they were really sunk in that, and that just really turned me off to the old, college business and what's really in these people's souls, what's in the pleasures are not bad. Pleasures are okay, but you have to deal with the pleasures in an objective way. To use the pleasures for, you have a good tasting steak, eat the steak, it's good tasting. It's like, you don't get it next time, don't get it. It's not the big thing. Hey, waiter, my steak is that, right? Okay, So it didn't go the way you wanted to. Somebody scratched your car. Okay, you don't go crazy. To transform from one thing to the other. What does it mean transform? Transform, liot koach hamisava, that the pleasure that you get in this world should be dveka be'elokim. It should be to the creator of all the pleasures of the world. Hine b'kol yom, every day, yetzer shel adam is gaber alav. Every day, the yetzer hora of a person gets stronger and stronger. Therefore, every day you have to draw down fire from above. There's a thing called reinforcement, right? It's a big thing in behavioral psychology. The whole thing with Pavlov's dogs and everything. You reinforce something. You reinforce. It's a principle. It's true. How essential it is if you can defy it, if you can change it. Chassidus says certainly you can. But the fact of the matter is it does certainly exist. So something that becomes reinforced, so it becomes part of your nature, right? A child goes into school and every day he gets a good, he comes to class and he tries, and you give him a candy. So he likes to try. And then afterwards you start to praise him. He doesn't need the candy so much. And then he reinforces him that he realizes that mathematics is a good thing. He realizes mathematics is a good thing. Or he realized before he was terrible at the gym, right? And every time you praise him, you reinforce him. Well, every day when we wake up, we open up our eyes and we feel ourselves, here I am, right? And you drink like a cup of coffee, it feels good. So every time and you want to move your hand, you move it, it feels good. Once in a while you wake up in the morning and like your hand falls asleep, right? Your arm falls asleep, you can't move it. You look at, oh, that's really not good. So next time you start to move it, oh, it's good, I feel good, right? You think about it, you feel good. So it's reinforcing, you're reinforcing all the time the fact that I exist, here I am. And not only do I exist, but I'm sort of like the king. Everything revolves around me. So every day that a person wakes up in the morning, in a way, it's to his disadvantage. It's to his disadvantage that he wakes up in the morning. Why? Because you wake up in the morning, it just reinforces your egotism. It reinforces what's called your yetzer hora. Here I am. I do what I want. I say what I want. I think what I want. I am God. Right? That's what you feel. So even if you know that it's not so, and you try to tell yourself it's not, but the fact of the matter is you're being reinforced. You're reinforcing yourself. So it's every day a person, right? You want to eat something, you're hungry, you eat, makes you feel good. So that reinforces your egotism. So every day the yetzer, what's called the egotism of a person, gets stronger. And therefore every day you have to draw down this fire brand new, because this selfishness and egotism, that's your fire. That's the fire comes. That's what's called your animal soul, Kehine, you can see, because it says, Yomim Yotzeru, that God created days. Sheyesh Mispar B'Kitzvah L'Shnei Chayei Adam. A person has a certain amount of time that he's going to live. Yemei Shana Shivim Shana, 70 years, 80 years. The godly soul doesn't have a certain amount of time. The godly soul is eternal, doesn't have to be fixed up. God put the godly soul into the world. God put the godly soul into the world in order to fix up the animal soul. But the godly soul itself does not need to be fixed, doesn't have a certain amount of time that it's going to live. It's eternal. And it's not enclosed in time. But it's attached to its source all the time, in Sof Baruch Hu. Like it says, like it says with the king in his kingship, it sits there. That's the thing of the godly soul. The thing of the godly soul. There's nothing really similar to it. Godly soul. It's like it says the Shekhinah never moved from the holy temple. The holy temple is destroyed, but the Shekhinah is still there. It still is holy. That's why so many rabbis say you shouldn't go on the holy temple, because it's holy. It's got a certain different level of holiness there. So it's the same thing, the godly soul. The godly soul of a Jew is something, it's a different type of a holiness. It's like pure godliness. But it's put into the world to put meaning into the world. The godly soul was not taken from the face of the lion and from the spiritual chariot, like the animal soul was. The godly soul comes from what's called the man that's sitting on the throne. That's what Ezekiel saw. Remember, we learned about Kamari Adam, like the appearance of man. The Ruach Adam, hi ha'ola l'mayla. And the spirit of man, this is what goes above. But Ruach Behema, but the spirit of the animal goes down below the Oretz. Shuba b'chinas ha'eretz el-yona, namely the upper earth, etc. Okay, so what do we have? We have over here that everything in the world comes from God, and everything in the world doesn't come like directly from God. Everything in the world comes through this whole process. There's a whole process that comes down, that the chariots and the different worlds and the throne of God and the face of the lion, the face of the ox, until it comes down and is created into the world. Everything in the world, except one thing, the godly soul. The godly soul does not come through all of these levels and whatever it is. A little bit. It says it comes from the man that's sitting on the face, that's sitting on this throne. So it's, so to speak, that's why it says Chilek Elokam Mimal Mamish. It's a pure essence of God, really physical in the world. I would just like to take a 2-minute break, please. Just bear with me. I'll be right back. 1 second. All right. So here we have the Jew has 2 souls. One soul is called the natural soul, and the other soul is called the godly soul. Sort of like the holy temple. Right? The holy temple was holy. It had one room in there where the essence of God was revealed in the Holy of Holies. So it is in every Jew. Every Jew has this whole, the Jews are different. What can we do? That's why the Jews are called the sons of God. That's why the Jews are called. It's explained in length and depth in this book called the Tanya, the 2nd chapter, right in the beginning. It says, look, it says in this, the Ruach Teshuv, okay, Ela Mispar Chaya Adam, but everyone is given a certain amount of life, days of his life, Lidlabish Bo Nefesh Bahamis, that the godly soul is put into the animal soul. Vishanav Katsuvim Lo, and his years are set for him, but Mispar. Sheshira Chachmaso, that measures out God's, that has been measured out by God's wisdom. That a person is able to bear, Lalot Mimenu Kolkach Kochos Venitzutzim, how many sparks it can raise up, Shenaflu Shama, that fell down there, B'Shviras HaKelim, in the breaking of the vessels. Okay, what's going on over here? The world is really very, very precise. Very precise. And these theories of chaos and things like that, if you have the wrong, you say, overview of the world, then the whole thing is total chaos. But in the fact of the matter is it's not chaos at all. Everything in the world is very, very exact. Everything is exact. Even the chaos in the world is exact. There's what's called the breaking of the vessels. The breaking of the vessels, this is the ability, the how do you say, the tendency of the world to deny God, to prove that there is no God, to be totally insensitive to God, totally insensitive to meaning, totally insensitive to life. That's what's called confusion, tohu. And these lights of tohu, of confusion, says that they're scattered all over the world, and the purpose of the Jewish people is to elevate them. It says that when the Jewish people were in Egypt, and they withstood all the temptations and the fears and things like that, and the suffering that they had in Egypt, and they still held on to the belief in God, it says that elevated 202 of these sparks. It says altogether there is 288, and it elevated 202 of these sparks. Okay, whatever it is. When you're in the world, what the point is that what you do in the world has a tremendous effect. You're here in the world for a purpose. You're here in the world, especially the Jewish people. You're here in the world for a purpose, to perfect the world. Part of the world is the non-Jews. That the world should be a perfect world. There shouldn't be any war, any hatred, etc. That's called elevating the world. In order to bring down this fire from above, as you have to bring it from the head, from yourself. By means of an arousal from below. Namely, you want to pray properly. You want to do what you're supposed to do. You have to think. You have to think, where you came from. For Shorsha and its source, from Recover Yona in the upper chariot. That from it came this power, a desire of your animal soul canal. A person can naturally think, one second, if everything comes from God, and my soul is coming from God, so therefore everything I want is from God. So why shouldn't I do what I want? Which is a very, very good, a very logical and a deep conclusion to come to the point where it says that, and it says in the Talmud that a thief, before he goes to steal, he prays to God for success. Ganva pu machtarta barachmanakarya. That a thief, because this thief, we're talking about a Hasidic thief, and he thinks about it and he says, listen, what? I just read this mimer in Parshas Titetse, and it says that everything comes from God, and my animal soul comes from God, and my animal soul is a thief. I love it. I just love to be a thief. I have these tremendous insights and inspirations on where to steal and how to steal and when to steal, what to steal, where to get rid of it, right? And bravery, what floor it's on, this, and then everything. I'm the best thief in the world, and I'm religious also. I'm religious. I believe that God gave me this ability, and I just read this mimer that just supports it. It says that my godly soul my animal soul comes from God. Everything comes from God. The money I'm about to steal comes from God, and my animal soul comes from God. So everything comes from God. Says the Rebbe. Yes, the problem is that it doesn't come exactly that way. Your godly soul, yes, comes from God. To feel this godly soul, that's a different. To identify it is different. There, the godly soul, every impulse it has is true, is right, is accurate. But the animal soul is not accurate. The animal soul, it comes from God. It's true, but it comes through all of these channels and veils and contractions and everything, so that everything becomes all confused. Right? It's like somebody taking a trumpet and just going up, standing in the Philharmonic Orchestra or something like that, and just starting to blow a trumpet because he knows how to blow a trumpet. And his father happens to be, a very important person. He's a multimillionaire or something like that. And so nobody you can't touch him. Everybody's screaming, but it's terrible music. The fact of the matter is terrible. So it's true, your animal soul and your Yetzer Hara comes from God. Yes. Right, and that's the important person that it comes from. But don't think that means that everything you think is right. Don't think because you have a good trumpet, you bought the best trumpet possible. But don't think that means that you're a good player. You can play with it. You have to know how to play it. It's the same thing with the animal soul. The animal soul, its urges, and I have to be taught. It has to be taught. And teaching here, it's not intellectual. Part of it is intellectual, but the main thing of the animal soul is emotions. You have to find something that's as pleasurable and that's as meaningful, that's a better word, meaningful as pleasures in this world. It's a very, very important thing, very important thing. Like all these Eastern religions and basically all psychiatry and this is based on the idea that man wants pleasure. Man wants pleasure and he wants to avoid pain. That's man. Man he wants pleasure, and the goal of life is to have as much pleasure as you can possibly have. And of course, if you have cheap physical pleasure, so it just in the end, it's not, you're wasting your time. You're running after cheap stuff. It's not going to work. You have to find genuine pleasures and pleasure. Well, the fact is that's a big lie, because there's things that if a person finds meaning, something meaningful to him, he's willing to suffer for that meaning. A person is willing to suffer, right? He's willing to give everything. So give his life so his father should get his father out of prison. He gives his life. What type of pleasure he's going to get out of that? Right? He's just suffering. Well, what's the point? Right? To defy. To be the power of defiance, right? Give me liberty or give me death. I am going to give me liberty or give me death. So if he gets death, what's he going to get? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. What good is it going to be if you die on your feet? What good is it? But the point is, no, he's willing to suffer for the truth. That's the point here. And the same thing with the animal soul. The animal soul, it likes pleasure. We have to teach it, though, that it should suffer for the truth. It shouldn't do what it wants to. It has to do for the sake of the truth. Right? So if it would be that, there wouldn't have been World War II. There wouldn't have been the other killing and murdering. So that's the whole idea. The godly soul comes into the world to show the world as personally what God is and how good God is. And that's the whole thing of prayer. Prayer means you arouse your emotions, as we're going to talk about, God willing, tomorrow. And now let's